the intellectual structure of what we are and what we're living, right? So these were the two things that we covered. So number one, the first chapter will be before the advent of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the layout, the historical layout of the world, what was happening at the time of revelation and before it. And then the second would be the advent of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the coming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Number three will be the era of Muslim glory. What did Muslim glory look like? How were we when we were at the peak of civilization? Okay? And then we'll talk about Muslim decadence, when the Muslims started to go into decline. And then number five, we'll talk about the rise of the West and its consequences and why the West rose, specifically the West of Europe. So not even the entirety of the West, but today we have different words for it. Today we call it like the transatlantic, the northern transatlantic. Other words are like the global north in comparison to the global south, and so on, right? The number six will be mankind's real loss under Western dominance. What did the world lose due to the dominance of the West? Chapter 7 will be the revival of the Muslim world. And number 8 will be the leadership of the Arab world, right? So now, you have to understand that Shaykh Abul Hasan Nadwi, rahimahullah, he wrote this book at a time where we were just leaving the colonial world order, and we were moving into a quote-unquote post-colonial or neo-colonial world order. Pakistan and India had just been separated underneath British mandate. You had the Arab world being created into the modern states that we have them right now. All of this is occurring, and the way the Orientalist, the white man, the way he was making us think about ourselves was, hey, Muslims, why are you so behind us? Why are you so below? And if you look at the theories, even the scientific theories, throughout, even up till the 1960s, 1970s, most scientists who are well known, their theory was race theory, that the Muslims were, because they're an inferior race, they were left behind and we came to the front. So this type of racial theory is deeply imbued into scientific thought, right? It's only recently that there's been more of an awareness on these matters and a pushback on it. So that's usually the question that was always posed, even by Muslims. So we have to understand that it's not just external forces that are shaping the way we think, but rather it's self-induced. It's self-induced. Like how you have the placebo effect, right? Where you're not actually having the medicine, but you start to see effects because you're thinking you're seeing effects. It's the same thing with the Muslim world in general, which is that, we ate the pill. Even though there's nothing in it, but we ate it, and we start to think that this is what needs to be done. We need to eat the pill. And that's the only way we'll be okay, we'll be happy, we'll succeed, we'll get to the level of the West. So Abul Hasan Nadwi, rahimahullah, he flips the question around. He flips it around and he says, hold on. The question isn't, what did the Muslims lose by falling behind? But rather, what did the world lose by the decline of the Muslims? So that's what his book is about. ماذا خسر العالم من حطام المسلمين. Right? The book is, again, I do expect, inshallah, highly recommend that you read the chapter before coming into class. They're short chapters. It's an easy read. It's not difficult language. And you'll have a good time. So that way I can further work on the thesis rather than having to just summarize the chapter. Okay. And it'll be available. We'll have somebody share the link, inshallah, so that everybody has access to the book. So he says, what did the world lose by the demise of the Muslims? And you have to understand, Abul Hasan Nadwi, rahimahullah, he is the product of this ongoing war within the subcontinent of the Muslims. Because remember, we, for almost 1,000 years, ruled the subcontinent. Right? It was our civilization that was the civilization. And then all of a sudden, the Brits come and they break that. And so the languages that were the languages of rule, the languages of empire, Arabic, Persian, became languages that were null and void. If you speak these, you are the lowest of the low. Right? The bureaucratic systems, the systems of governance and policy that enabled such people to have high statures, people of Shari'i knowledge, people of language, people of poetry, people of Mughal dynasty and empire, became absolutely the lowest of the low. Right? And this was intended, like it was instrumental, it was with a purpose. After this, there was a huge amount of time where Muslims had no education, no nothing. And you still see the effects of it in our villages, in our areas where people are disconnected from everything. They don't even know what La ilaha illallah means anymore. If you go into like areas of Pakistan like Andurun Sindh, like internal Sindh or internal Punjab and other areas, you'll see people don't even know what La ilaha illallah means, right? And these are the effects, these are the after effects of 200-300 years of colonization, right? And like coming back to the point, so there was a school that was formulated. It was called Aligarh University. And these were the inheritors of the modernist project, right? So they saw that the answer for Muslims to move forward was to fully accept the modernist project, the modern project, right? That's the only way Muslims will be able to push forward. And if you read what the founders of this school have to say, they're very much part and parcel of shall we say the race theory about how the white people are superior and how it's they're the ones who are better than us and we need to follow them and we need to believe in what they believe in. And so many of them rejected beliefs of the hereafter. They rejected resurrection and so on and so forth. So that was one school. And many scholars have written on the effects of Aligarh. So Aligarh is not just Aligarh, but every other university became an Aligarh, became that vision, right? Then you had an opposite movement, which was a preservation movement, which was the movement of Deoband, the school of Deoband, which its sole goal was to preserve the tradition that was present of Islam. And so their main purpose was to preserve the tradition. Quran and Sunnah, the madhahib, everything, let's preserve, right? And so they played a vital role in preserving what we had in the subcontinent, in India, Pakistan. At the time, just the subcontinent. The Nadwatul Ulama, the assembly of scholarship, was that middle ground that became the language, the scholars who could bring the two together. That was the goal of the Nadwa. The goal of the Nadwa, when it was formulated, was to be able to bring the scholars of Deoband, to bring scholars of Aligarh, and to be able to speak in both languages, right? So that's why you see, especially the early scholars of the Nadwa, you see that they were proficient in French, English, Arabic, Persian. They were well read in a diversity of sciences, right? And that's what made them very special and unique. They were supposed to be that bridging gap. And Abu al-Hasan Nadwi rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh is the fulfillment of that dream in one man. He is the fulfillment of that dream in one man, where at the youngest of ages, he had mastered English, French. Yeah, he was more deeper in English than anything else. And he wasn't, he writes himself, he says, I wasn't as interested in the Shari'i sciences. I wasn't as interested in fiqh and hadith and so on and so forth. I was more interested in Shakespeare and other things, right? But he says that my mother, subhanAllah, look at the dua of a mother and a righteous mother. He says that she would continue to make dua for me. So he comes from a family of scholarship. His father is one of the most phenomenal scholars. His brothers are all scholars. And his mother makes dua for him that, Ya Allah, bring him to the deen. Right? So he says at the age of 13 or 14 that he decided that Allah Azza wa Jalla will bring him towards learning Arabic and learning the deen more seriously. That doesn't mean that he didn't have a dini tarbiyah, he did, but it wasn't the same as like propelling yourself into scholarship, into knowledge. So he did. And he became a master of Arabic. And wallahi, up till today, it is an Indian scholar's books that are taught in Arabic by Arabs to learn Arabic. Right? Up till today. The basic books that we read in Arabic to learn Arabic are not written by an Arab, generally speaking. They're the books of Abu al-Hasan Nadawi, rahimahullah. That's how good his Arabic is. Right? And with time, it only excelled and exceeded. Right? It's so much so that he is more well known. Take this in, guys. He is more well known in the Arab world than he is in the subcontinent. He's that type of scholar that his acceptance was not specific to a region. Everybody loved him. It didn't matter what background you were. Everybody loved him. And I think a part of that is his sincerity, his ikhlas that he had. And also, he was constantly moving from place to place teaching. So he never graduated from a university, but he was a university professor in almost every part of the world. Right? That was Abu al-Hasan al-Nadawi. So he wrote this book when he was very young, I believe at the age of 18. He saw a problem and he wrote it in Arabic. And then back then, what was the hub of Islamic civilization, printing, etc.? Egypt. He sends it over to, he writes his book. He says, I did mutala'ah. I went and resourced books in over 7 languages. 7 languages to write this book. Right? And he wrote this book back in can somebody remember? 1930? Something. If somebody can check that for me, inshallah, let me know. But I think the book was written back in 1930 something. طيب. He says, I sent the book, and I'll just mention this one story, and we'll get into the meat of the program today, bi'idhnillah. I sent it over, and I didn't hear back for years. I didn't hear back. He says, then I went on my tour of the Arab world. He says, over there, I'm sitting with an ambassador of Jordan. And he's sitting there and he's talking to me. He's saying, there's this book. It has changed the world. Everybody reads it. It's changed the perspective of the Arabs about ourselves. It's changed how the Muslims see themselves in the Arab world. And you know what's insane? He's like, yeah, what's insane? He's like, it's written by somebody from India. He's like, really? Because he hadn't heard about it. He's like, yeah, everybody reads it now. It's like part of curriculums. He's like, can you give me a copy of the book? He's like, sure, I have one on me right now. He gives it to him and it's his book. Right? And so he had no idea. That was the first time he got a copy of his own book, right? After multiple years. And it really had changed the landscape. And up till today, it's still read in high schools. It's still given as gifts to people to read by themselves or read in circles. So it's a must-read, effectively. It's a must-read. Okay, I think that's enough of that, inshallah. Let's get into a quick revision of what we covered before. We will be covering the basic framework of a worldview. Now remember what we said, a worldview is like a language. What does a language do? It takes thoughts, it communicates them to the next person, and it allows them to understand what you said and communicate back to you in language. That's what language is. It's communication, right? The worldview is a language of thought. It's the way you think. So unless me and you share a worldview or understand a worldview, I'm going to have a very hard time being able to communicate to you what I'm trying to envision about the world. Does that make sense, guys? Okay? So just like how if you're duolingual or you're trilingual or you're multilingual, you're going to know that certain things can't be translated. You have a hard time of translating a kahavat, a saying, a qawl, a shi'r, a poetry. You're going to have it's very hard to translate. That's why you always say, if you want to read Iqbal, you only read Iqbal in Urdu. If you try to translate them, it'll be ruined. And likewise, if you try to read Mu'allaqat, the Arab poetry, if you try to translate it, it's not going to make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Stand up, both of you, and cry with me. What are you talking about? Right? بِسِقْتِ اللِّوَى at a place called Siqt of Lawa. فحوملي, and then حومل. What are you talking about, right? But in Arabic, it's very different, right? And so likewise, if you don't share a worldview or you don't recognize a worldview, you're going to have a hard time. So as Muslims, we recognize that there's a clash of worldviews. There's a clash of the way we think about the world and the way others think about the world. And so the basic parts of a worldview is as follows. Number one, you have ontology. The first thing that builds a worldview is ontology. What is ontology? It's very simple. It's the study of what is, the study of what exists. Whatever exists is my ontology. Okay. Now, if I know what exists, then if I believe that Allah exists, if God exists, then that means the most important study of what exists is the study of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of God. Right? And that's where theology comes into play. That's where aqidah or theology comes into play. So if you're a theist, if you're somebody who believes in God, then that becomes very important. Now, if I know what exists, then I need to ask myself, how do I know what I know? How do I know this exists? This is the question of knowledge, of the ilm. How do I know what I know? So it's the knowledge of knowledge, which is called epistemology. What is knowledge? How do I acquire knowledge? What is true knowledge from false knowledge? Right? In short, it's called justified true beliefs. Right? That's what knowledge is supposed to be. In Arabic, it's very similar. There's a bit of a difference in our traditional understanding and what later epistemology is known as, but it's simply justified. So there needs to be a justification. There needs to be some dalil, some proof. True, sadiq, it needs to be real. It can't be false. Belief, it needs to be a belief. If it's these three things, then you have knowledge. You have knowledge of something, right? Okay, so then it's epistemology. How do I know what I know? Okay, so if I know what exists, I know how I know what I know, then my question will be, who and what am I? Who and what am I? I know I exist. I know how I know this. And then my question is, who am I? What am I? This is the question of anthropology. This is the question of anthropology. What is man and who is man? Who is man? Who is mankind? What does it mean to be human? Right? We all talk about human rights. But if you have different understandings of what it means to be human, and you have different understandings of where rights come, you're going to have a miscommunication of these ideas. Right? And if you're not aware that there's differences in what a human is, then you're going to have even more of a problem. Right? So this is the question of the philosophical question of anthropology. Right? What is man? Who is man? Okay? All right. So now if I figured out that a man is somebody who has a soul, a man is somebody who has a body, etc., and I understood this, I know this, now my question is, okay, why am I here? What's my purpose? What is the purpose of this universe? This is the question of teleology, of telos. Right? These words are very complicated, they sound fancy, but the ideas are very simple, inshallah. Right? So the question of purpose, what does it mean to be in this world? What is the purpose of mankind? What is the purpose of this universe? This is the question of teleology. Question of teleology. Okay, I know I exist. I know what I know and how I know it. I know who I am. I know why I'm here. Now the question is, how do I enact that? How do I go around behaving in the way aligned with my purpose? Remember, I have a purpose. How do I now align my actions with my purpose? Do you guys understand? Well, that's the question. Do we understand that, right? Do we understand if my purpose is aligning with my actions? This is the question of morals and ethics. This is the question of morals and ethics. The way you behave in this world, what to do, what not to do, what is right, what is wrong, all of this is contingent upon my purpose. What does it mean to be human? What is the purpose of humanity? Okay? Then you have, after that, all right, I know how to behave. I know how to act in this world in alignment with my purpose. Now the question is, I'm not alone. Human beings are social creatures. We live together. The question then becomes, how do other people around me need to behave to be in alignment with this purpose? How do other people around me need to organize themselves in society to be aligned with this purpose, this vision of ethics in purpose? Right? This is law and politics. This is law and politics. So when people say, just be a good person, that doesn't really make much sense. What does it mean to be a person? What is your purpose as a person? What's right from wrong? And then how do you act on it? And then how do you organize society? These are all questions that are integrated. They're all part of one another. And then the last part of this is, okay, I know what's right from wrong. I know how we need to act in the world. I know what law is. I know what politics is. I know what society needs to look like. But then, is it beautiful? Does it look good? Does it feel good? This is the question of aesthetics. This is the question of aesthetics. So in Arabic, ontology is called umur al-amma. Theology is called aqidah. Epistemology is called nadhariyatul ma'rifah. Anthropology is called ilm al-insan. Teleology is called ilm al-maqsad. Okay? Morality and ethics is called tahsin wa taqbih. Okay? And then law and politics is siyasa and shara. And the last part is called aesthetics, which is also part of al-husn wal-qubh. Right? And so the idea is, if you want to know anybody's worldview, this would be how you would recognize a worldview. Mashi? Do you guys understand that? Right? I'll tell you what modernity does in very simplistic ways. Modernity says, I could care less about what you think exists or not, and how you know what you know, and what the question of a human being is, and what my purpose is in this world. I can divorce that. I can divorce these questions, this set of questions, from the questions of what is ethical, what is moral, how society should look like, what are politics, and what's beautiful. I can separate these questions from the questions that preceded. Right? They say, we don't need to think about these. They're not as important as these questions. You can disagree on these, and we can still agree on these when we know that these don't make any sense without the earlier questions, because they build on one another. Right? And so the question of, is abortion correct or incorrect? All right? The questions of assisted death that has become legal in Canada, right? All of these so-called ethical questions and political orientations, they don't make any sense if you don't have a connection to the previous questions. All right. Usually I do have slides for this section, but I'm just going to quickly go through it because there was some connection issue here. Let's quickly cover ontology, Islam versus modernity, inshallah, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. In the Islamic worldview, the most important thing that exists is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the modern worldview, this question, as I said, holds no importance. You could believe, you could not believe, it doesn't make a difference. Why? Because the thing that really matters, the only thing that really exists, is the natural world. It's that which is eminent. So it's called an eminent worldview. What does eminence mean? It's like, okay, think that you're at the ocean, you're at the sea, and you can only see till the horizon. My eyes can only see till the horizon, I will only believe that the horizon exists. After that, I can't see it. So it doesn't make a difference to me because my concern is up till the horizon. So everything that I can perceive is imminent. After that, it doesn't matter to me. So if beside me I have Muhammad here, and Muhammad is saying, no, but clearly there's an island after that. We have a message here saying that there's an island after that. We know that the world exists after the horizon. How do we know? We've been told. People have traveled. The world knows. But I am saying, no, well, you know what? That's not our concern, Muhammad. Go ahead and believe that if you want, but we'll get there when we get there. What matters to us is what we can see till the horizon. So it's a little bit different than naturalism or empiricism, which is to say only believing in material. So materialism, only believing in the material world. Yes, you could be a materialist, and most people are materialists today. But, at the same time, they're not going to stop you from believing anything beyond that. But it doesn't matter to us. That's the idea. It doesn't matter in the real world. The real world is the material world. Anything beyond that doesn't matter. This is effectively at the core of secularism. This is at the core of the secular world. The secular world is an eminent world. Right? I only believe in what I see. Khalas, after that, there's nothing. Even if you believe, that's okay. You keep that personal and private to yourself. It doesn't matter. So, but in Islam, the most important reality, the most important fact about existence is the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tawheed is for us what gives gravity to all knowledge and all understanding. If there is no Tawheed, everything loses its gravitational orbit. Everything goes into a free fall. None of it is given its due course in perspective. It all becomes shambles and insanity. And that's what we've been living for the past 200 years. None of it makes sense. You could talk about politics. You could talk about ethics. You could talk about science. You could talk about society, psychology. That's all good, but it's just an internal thing. And within it, it might make sense, but it doesn't make sense in the grander scheme of anything. It's all free falling, right? So for us, if you don't have the wujud Allah, then nothing makes any sense. Nothing has true purpose. Nothing has real meaning. Nothing is really ethical, right? Because knowledge for us is ethical. And so we'll come to the next question. But anyways, so I just wanted to outline that. So for us, Tawheed becomes the gravity for all other things in the world. The angels have their own place. The jinn have their own place. The human beings have their own place. The birds, everything in the heavens and the earth, everything, the planets, the stars, all of it has meaning in position with the wujud, with the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His rights over us. His rights over us. Okay, now when it comes to the seen realm, as we said, we believe in the seen realm. They also believe in the seen realm. They call it the empirical world or the natural world. We believe in the unseen, the alim al-ghayb. We believe in angels, jinns, spirits. We believe in barzakh. They do not believe in any of this. They deny this. They deny it, right? As we said, we also said even if they let you go ahead, believe it, but it doesn't matter. That's the idea, right? Okay, then we believe in resurrection and judgment. We believe in al-ma'ad, the return. We believe in moral accountability because of it. We believe in paradise and the hellfire. These things are just as real to us as the physical world. For them, the eschaton, that's what the Christians call this idea of the hereafter, all these other things. In Christianity, it's called the eschaton. They do not believe in it. They deny an eschaton. An identifiable eschaton is denied. Okay. We also believe in the cosmos. We believe in the universe, human life, all of it is infused with purpose and meaning. We believe in a telos. وَمِن شَيْءٍ لَا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ. That there is not a single thing in the heavens and earth that does not do tasbih of its Lord. Glorify it, magnify it, cherish it. Everything is deeply impregnated with the meaning of existence in its relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's only humans who get to deny it in jinn. It's only humans and jinn who get to deny it. Everybody else exists with this fact. Right? This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if we had revealed it upon a mountain, it would have ruptured asunder just by the physical presence of the Quran. But rather, human beings are very ignorant. Right? What does it mean by ignorant? They choose to ignore. Just like how when we choose to sin, what does Allah call a sinner? A sinner knows he is sinning. But Allah calls the sinner a jahil. And what does Allah call a person of knowledge? A person of taqwa. That is only that إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِ الْعُلَمَاء. That verily only the people of knowledge have khashiyah, have awe of their Lord, because they know God and they act upon it. But it's only a jahil who sins. Right. Okay, so everything about the world has real knowledge if you understand its purpose and meaning. It is given place within it. Right? For them, an identifiable teleology, a telos of the world is denied. All right, so this, khalas, we spoke about, very quickly, we spoke about ontology. We're making good time, inshallah. Any questions on ontology? What exists? I did a quick rehash. Is it clear? Okay, last time we got into a lot more detail, right? And we did a lot more, but right now we're just doing a very quick summary so that when we start talking about the historical side of things, inshallah, that we'll be able to carry these ideas across to our historical discussion of Islam, inshallah. طيب. Next part is epistemology, and we already spoke about that. We said the science of what exists and how it exists. All right. For us, one of the most important things for us when it comes to knowledge and how we understand knowledge is wahi, revelation. Quran and Sunnah. It's very important to us. It tells us, it shapes how we believe the world exists. صح ولا لا? If we didn't have the Quran and Sunnah, would we be complete in how we understand the world? Would we be able to see the world correctly? No, we would not. We would not. And so the Quran and Sunnah is essential. Without it, there is no knowledge. Right? You know, Allah Azza wa clearly says about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَمَا كُنْتَ تَدْرِي مَا الْكِتَابُ وَلَا الْإِيمَانُ. You did not know what books were. You didn't know about the previous revelations. وَلَا الْإِيمَانُ. Nor did you guys have iman. You didn't know what faith was. So Allah is talking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You didn't have anything. You had words. You didn't have meaning. وَلَكِنْ جَعَلْنَاهُ نُورًا. But we made it light for you. We made it a light and we put it in your chest, in your heart. فَسُبْحَانَ Like real knowledge is light. Right? And wahi is light. Right? طيب, so that's very important in how we know what we know, is Quran and Sunnah. Then for them, revelation is denied. There's no such thing as revelation. There is no need for it. God does not, God made a clock. He made a clock and the clock ticks and that's it. That's if you believe in a God. You don't even need to believe in a God. You can live life without believing in God and you can still be, what's the key word? A good person. Just be a good person. Okay? As if you know what that means, right? You would need to know what that means. So you can live without revelation in life effectively. You can find your own purpose. Because purpose is something that is relative. It changes from person to person. It's different. There is no universal purpose of existence. If there is none, then you can find your own. Just go become a hippie and you'll find your purpose. Go travel. Or, you know what? Go spend time with different movements or different people and you'll figure out your purpose. My purpose is my profession. That is not your purpose. That is just an identity you have. You're serving a purpose, but it's not the real purpose of existence. It's additional. It's added on. It's not a real purpose of life. Okay. Next is sense, experience. Sensorial experience, the empirical senses. The 5. Touch, smell, taste, sight, and hearing. These are the 5. We call them in Arabic, hiss, al-hawas al-khams, the 5 senses. They also deeply, very heavily rely upon sensorial experience. In fact, empiricism, which became the madhab of modernity. So remember, we said that modernity is not like one madhab. It's like one big religion, and within it you have different madhahib. Within it you have different schools. Okay? The one that won out was the madhab of empiricism. You had different madhahib. You have the existentialist madhab. You have the madhab of rationalization. Okay? You have idealism. You have other madhahib. But the one that won out was, at this level at least, was the empiricist school, which is that we only believe in what we can see, touch, and experiment on. Right? That's the madhab of hiss, sensorial experience. Now, moving on, what else? How do we know what we know? Number 3, reason, aql. Rationalization, reason. We believe in reason. We believe in aql. They also believe in reason and aql. Remember, famously, Descartes said, I think, therefore, I am. Descartes said, I think, therefore, I am. The only thing that I can use to really know if something is true is because I am. I think. Right? So rationality holds a high status as well within modernity. Then we have reports, akhbar, khabar, transmitted knowledge. For us, this is very important because effectively Quran and Sunnah is what? Transmitted knowledge. But it's the highest level of it, so it becomes its own category. But even outside of that, reports are very important. What is tafsir? Reported knowledge. What is seerah? Reported knowledge. So for us, it holds a very, very high status, which is authentic reports. Authentic reports. Okay? Now for them, reports do not hold any conceptual centrality. They do not hold any weight conceptually. But in reality, we said that they do use them. In reality, we said that they do use them, right? Do you guys remember the example we give? How are reports important to them even though they try to deny them? Somebody remember? From the last course? Or just in general, give it a thought. How do they use reports but at the same time deny reports? Yes? Yeah, very good, very good. New research has proven that XYZ is very beneficial. Cool? I believe you on what? Transmission. The entirety of quantum physics is built on transmission. Nobody goes and does those experiments. Likewise, nobody does what Albert Einstein's experiments did for relativity. Okay? The only thing everybody can once do in their lifetime is what Newton did, where an apple fell on his head. Yes? All right. But other than that, you're not really going to be going and doing experiments. You take them on khabar, transmission. So they rely almost entirely on it because that's how knowledge is passed, through transmission. But they're going to say, nah, it's really not that important. Don't worry about it. Just trust me. Cool. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, right? Anyways, then the last portion of how we know what we know for us in our worldview is fitrah, the natural intuition, also hads, spiritual inspiration. You know, and when you say in Urdu, they say maa ki hiss, the sixth sense of a mother or a woman, right? It's very real, is it not? Your mother knows before you sometimes even know, right? How does that happen? It's inspiration. It's intuition. So it's quite central It's quite important for us. It's not central in the sense that we develop sharia upon it. We're not going to develop like rulings of life or so on. Neither can, no matter how beloved a person is to us, how important he is to us, he can't come to us and say, sharia is null and void. You don't need to pray anymore. You don't need to give zakah. I don't need to pray anymore because I'm sitting here, but my soul is in the Kaaba doing tawaf. So I don't need to pray anymore. Nobody can do that. It doesn't matter how strong your spiritual relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. It cannot null and void Quran and Sunnah. It cannot oversee true authentic khabar. Okay? So intuition is important to us. Fitra is important to us. Fitra is more like your primordial natural state towards God. Right? Like it's that which calls every human being towards Allah. Many people come towards Islam not because of rational arguments, not because of other things, but they come because their fitra is salim, their fitra is clean. Coincidentally enough, especially early on in modernity, intuition held a very important role. Intuitions are still like, I don't want to get into it, but like Hegel and other like major philosophers of modernity, they use intuition a lot. Right? Even Kant, who was supposed to bring the two madhahib, like he was the Shafi'i of modernity, right? Where he takes the rationalist school and he takes the empiricist school and he says, I'm going to do jama' of them, I'm going to gather them, and he synthesizes his own. So effectively, the modernity that we've inherited is on the school of Kant. Kant is like the mega philosopher of modernity. You can effectively trace almost everything back to him. And he's also one of the most difficult philosophers to read. He's a big challenge to read. He's very difficult to read. Partially because he wrote in German. German is a very literal language. And so he's trying to transmit to you some very philosophically deep issues in an extremely literal language, right? So intuition is important to them. Mashi. Let's move on to anthropology. What is a man? A man, according to us, has a body. According to them, has a body. We have a mind, we have a heart, we have a qalb. They believe in a mind, but not a qalb. So for us, the qalb is a living, breathing being. It might not even be the physical heart where it's placed, but it is the domain of thought. Right? Because if you have a bad heart, then you have bad thoughts. Right? Because doubts are always connected to desires. And when your desires are leading you towards something, your doubts will start to increase as well. So that's why we always ask Allah for Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim, guide us to the straight path. Because it doesn't matter how intellectually smart you are, it doesn't matter how awesome you sound or how much you've studied or what you've read, if your heart is slipped, then everything about you has gone astray. That's why we ask Allah Azza wa Jal, the Prophet ﷺ would ask, Ya muqallib al-qulub, O the turner of hearts, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. Make my heart firm upon your religion. Right? So for us, it's more the heart. For them, it's the mind. Then you have the soul, you have the ruh. And for them, the ruh is kind of, as we said, they're not really sure about the ruh. They're like, listen, again, if it exists, it exists. If it doesn't, even if it exists, it's just a natural phenomena, guys. Like the consciousness. Consciousness for them effectively is a natural phenomena. Even though it can't be explained through nature, but they're still going to say, no. Inshallah, one day we'll figure out how it's natural. Right? So you can't explain consciousness according to any natural principles or any natural method. You have to take it on something being different here, something being unique. But they're like, but you know what? It's just some sort of neurological pathway, because they coincide, because it's causation. So there we go, and it makes sense that these physical things that are occurring that are blind are causing something that's conscious. So there you go. But that's a faith. You need to take that on faith. You need to believe that, right? Anyways, that's called the hard problem of consciousness. Coming back, you have language. For us, language is very central for what a human being is. You cannot underappreciate this fact. The Quran's miracle is Lingual. The Quran is a miracle. How is it a miracle? By language. Primarily, it's by language. For them, language is not central. Language is, again, it's just getting ideas across. That's it. Nothing more to it. Language for us is everything. Language is adab. Language is moral. Language is culture. Language is civilization. For them, language is, it's not much. But again, this is a modern. We're not talking about postmoderns. We're talking about moderns. Postmoderns are the ones who have problems with pronouns. She, he, they. Changing language. This is very much a postmodern thing. Right? So they're very aware that language is very, very important. Right? Just like how we're aware that language is very important. It's the moderns who said that language is not really all that important. Right? Okay. Now, moral responsibility, which we call in Arabic taklif, being a mukallaf, having moral agency or responsibility. This is something that's very, very important for us. For them, it's not central. Remember, we said that as a human being, you have purpose, you have telos, right? And that purpose is what gives you how to navigate action in life, right? It's that purpose, that meaning of being human that drives you towards action, towards being ethical, towards being moral. And that's what keeps your compass alive. It gives you a map to plot your compass on. For them, morality, ethics, this isn't something that's part of being human. No, it's not. It's morally just a part of being society. So it's like, yeah, I need to be moral, but what's the reason? To be a good citizen. To be a good citizen. A good Samaritan, right? Because I exist around people. So the only way we're going to really get along, the only way things will be fine is if we actually have laws. If we don't have laws, then what do they think? They think we're all going to be animals. There's going to be anarchy. Does that make sense? Right? So human beings have always existed with social norms, which are then ethical norms. And if you don't have that, then we will be lawless. We will have anarchy. People will be breaking people down. They'll kill each other. They'll do this. They'll do that. Which is true. It's true. But there's a depth to it, which is that it's part of what it means to be human. Okay. Now, alhamdulillah, we've covered the basic questions. We're not going to cover the other parts, which are politics, ethics, and morality. We're not going to cover these things. We're also not going to cover aesthetics, but we covered the major parts that are missing in most discussions. So, like, let me give you an example again, right? When you say, listen, this debate about being on the right side of history, okay, being on the right side of history, what does that mean? What does that mean? That means you believe that there's a wrong side to history, okay? That is based off of what? What do you guys think that's based off of? Come on, guys. What do you think that's based off of? Being on the right or the wrong side of history? Respect. Okay, good. Where does that come from? Perspective. All right. But let's go with perspective and like respect. Dignity, right? Okay. And where does that come from? Human dignity, right? Just being human. All right, good. But then that turns into the question of anthropology, right? What is a human? So if the modern doesn't believe that the soul is part of a human being, then there are no religious rights. Does that make sense, right? Effectively, religion is just about your perspective about what's good and bad. So you keep it at that. So that's fine. But at an international level, there's no space for it. Do you guys follow, right? Because there's no space for the soul, right? And the reason for that is because there's no space for God in that conversation. Do you guys see how that's working? Right? So you're not going to give religious rights. They're secular rights, like as in you can privately practice, but at a level of like sharia, a level of like governance. No, these things, they don't exist. They don't exist. They're not part of this conversation. Right? So do you see how you were able to make that connection? It required some thinking. The more you do it, the more conversations you have, the more you'll be able to start figuring out why these different languages of thought, they make a difference, right? Okay. We have about 15 minutes, is that correct? 10, 15 minutes? Mashi. Okay. Let's talk about some defining characteristics of modernity. What are we going to talk about? Some sifats of the modern world. The first one is disenchantment of the world. This is a technical term. The loss of the sacred. Nothing is special anymore. Nothing is special anymore. Nothing is sacred anymore. Nothing is that which awes you anymore. It's all just natural. Everything is knowable. Everything is knowable. There is no metaphysical. There is no that which reaches beyond the pale of human natural world. It is all physical and it's all knowable. It's all knowable. So there's this like deep disenchantment, right? Let's think of it like this, right? Like if I go, right, and I look at a beautiful lake with a beautiful forest. What's the Muslim reaction? Subhanallah. What does Subhanallah mean? Allah is awesome. He is awe-enshrining. Allah is amazing. Subhanallah. I can't even express what Subhan. It's like above. He's transcendent. Right? So that's the Muslim reaction because you're connecting this as creation of Allah. Right? What's the secular reaction? Oh my God, nature is so beautiful. Nature, no, not even the oh my God, nature is so tantalizing, it's so powerful, it's so beautiful. As if you're giving agency, will, power to the natural world, right? Almost as if it exists by itself. You know, if you put something good out into the universe will give you back something good, right? It's like you're giving agency, you're giving power to the concept of the universe. You've made it Lord. Right? Like these ideas, again, this language, it's not neutral, right? There's a depth of ideas behind it, a depth of belief behind it, right? Put out good vibes, you'll get good vibes. Karma, you know? Like stuff like that. It's not neutral. Do you get what I'm trying to say, right? There's like a depth of like understanding that goes behind it, right? So anyway, everything is disenchanted. Everything is disenchanted. The second sifa or trait is rationalization. And this is connected to what I just said. Everything can be understood logically, systemically, and objectively. Everything can be understood logically, systemically, and objectively. There's a theory for everything and it will be understood. There is nothing that is beyond understanding. There is nothing that is beyond understanding. For us, we know that the reality of Allah is beyond understanding. We know that there's the alim al-ghayb. There's in the unseen realm. We live with the reality of ignorance. We get to know what we know and we don't know much. Right? There's humility. So you're very humble. You start every book of Islam is started with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praises for Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. Right? Salawat upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Make dua for this author. Forgive him for his sins. And may Allah make of benefit whatever he wrote. This is the general gist of every Islamic book ever written. Its introduction. Why? It's this depth of humility that our knowledge is so small. Even if we've done so much science. Even if we've learned so much. Even if we know so much, it's still so little. But the modern ideas of straight kibr and shirk and kufr. We are our own gods. We know everything while there is nothing else out there except us. Effectively, there's nothing but a human being, right? Think about it, right? In this mind-numbing universe, it's so big, you can't even grasp your mind around how big this universe is. The only thing that has a consciousness, apparently, is the human being. The only thing that really matters is the human being. So effectively, the human is God. That's why Nietzsche said, God is dead and I am God. Because there's no space for God in this world. God doesn't do anything anymore. We have to figure things out for ourselves. Right? Okay, another sifa is secularization, which we're not going to have much time to discuss because it's all of these things are their own studies, by the way, right? I'm just so you guys know. Secularization is the loss of religious influence or religious belief at a societal level, or you can repaint this and you can say that it is the reconstructing of religious thought underneath this secular power. So secularism dictates what is religion, what is not religion. What is good religion, what is bad religion. What is radical and extreme and terroristic, and what is good and happy and good religion. This is all dictated by the secular power, right? So it's a re-imaging, it's a re-engineering of religion. Okay, I don't have more time to get into it, but that's a good definition. All right, another attribute of or characteristic of modernity is alienization or atomization. Today, like COVID really put this on display. People are extremely isolated today than they ever have been in the world. There's an entire ministry in the UK. It's called the Minister of Loneliness. And I'll tell you, she's not lonely because she's very busy. Right? There's a lot of loneliness in the UK, and it's not just there, it's across the Western world. Most people are like, I want to be independent, you know. I'm going to turn 18 and move out from my parents' home. What a dream. It's all about making it by yourself, you know. Where does this come from, guys? You got to think about this. It's about this idea of you being your own boss, independent, expressing your own will, right? Taking yourself as your own God, right? Because nobody's going to influence me. I'm sick and tired of my parents trying to control me. You get what I'm trying to say? Like, where is this coming from, right? Like, where is bir? Where is working? Where is these relationships that you cannot destroy? Where is the highness of silatul rahim, being good to your parents, right? Like, these things are deeply part of how we see ourselves, right? While in the modern world, there's no space for them because it's all about breaking you up, alienizing you, and making you true servants of the state. So the only person or the only entity you have real loyalty to you is not to the tribe, not to the family, not to religion, not to anything else, but simply to your work and effectively to the state. Right? Okay. So alienization is very, very real. Alienizing yourself from family, meaningful work, religion, clan, all of it, you're alienized from it. Right? You feel like a stranger in your own city. Right? That is how modernity works, right? Another attribute of modernity is commodification. Everything is reduced simply to an object of currency. If it's not bringing in enough people, if there's not enough money coming in, then it's not worth it. Wife, mother, not worth it because there's no money coming in. Value is attached to commodity. If it cannot be commodified, it does not have value. And we've taken this very deeply. It's part and parcel of the industrial structure, of the structure of, just workplace. Unfortunately, like we fall into it too, right? Oh, if a class doesn't have enough people coming to it, then you know what? It doesn't have any value anymore. Effectively, its value is attached to how many people come and how much attraction there is, right? I know mashayikh who were running amazing programs, depth of knowledge. They had good people coming, but you know what? There wasn't enough. Not enough money coming in. So it's all about commodity. It's all about commodity, right? So this is a major attribute of modernity. Elders, there's no space for them. Shove them into old homes. Why? Because they're useless economically. So there's no space for them anymore. Children, they're like cats. Children and cats, they're cute. You keep them around if you want them. Right? If you don't, then it's absolutely fine. It's fine. It's okay. You don't need to have kids. It's fine. Live yourself, YOLO. Right? That's effectively, it's all about yourself and economic value, right? Again, a woman has no value unless she's in the workplace. Effectively, right? You could make it seem all cute and cuddly, yeah, sure, but in reality today, you know what? If there's like a woman who's a doctor, she holds a lot more respect than a woman who isn't. Or she's making more money, she has a lot more respect. She doesn't have any real value in modernity. because she doesn't bring in value in this social structure that is inherited by mankind. Because she needs to bring in capital. It's that simple. Right? Commodification. Commodification is very real. All right. Other things. Let me choose and pick now. Individualism. Growing stress on individuals as opposed to meditating structures such as family. So before, what would they say? It takes a village to raise a child. You can't raise a child by yourself. You have the entire family. Now today, no. Nuclear family. Father and mother. That's the only people that have influence on the child. Grandparents, how dare you say anything to the kids? Uncles and aunts, you guys aren't even family. I see you once in the year for Christmas or something, or Eid. There's no space for structure. It's all individualism. Even the family is individualistic. I want to have my own family, take them away from everybody else, be by myself. No supporting structures. This is all from the attributes, characteristics of modernity. Nationalism, the rise of ethnic modern nation states. The nation state, if I needed to put it in simple terms, if the Muslim Khilafah is what represents the Muslims, and Islam as a polity, as a political structure, the nation state is what represents modernity as a political structure. The nation state is what represents modernity as a political structure. What else? Subjectivism. Everything is subjective. It's like, oh, that's a good perspective. That's your perspective, though. This is my perspective, and that's it. There's no truth anymore. There's no objectivity. It's all subjective. My subjective experience, your subjective experience, right? We use a lot of that in therapy, right? It's like, oh no, okay, I appreciate your experience. It could be absolutely wrong, but I appreciate your experience. Somebody else has a total different experience. So effectively, there's no truth anymore. So it's just experiences. So it's all subjective. All right. As well, so it's quite oxymoronic that at the same time, objectivism is also something that's very real. It's all about, listen, this is the objective fact. It's science. Okay? But this science is built off of a theory, which is subjective. But yet it's objective. Right? So anyways, these are some of the internal incoherencies. And we'll stop there, inshallah. One of the last things that I do want to cover is, obviously we know globalization is very real. I'm sure you've heard that, so I'm not going to go into that. Homogenization, culture becomes the same across the board. Everybody has McDonald's now and Burger King, right? And the last thing is the therapeutic motivations, right? Again, it's therapy that takes the limelight. This is a huge topic. We can discuss it at another place. It's not religion. Therapy is the religion of modernity. Therapy is the religion of modernity. What gives you meaning? My therapist said this is how my life should look. My therapist said cut off my family and friends because they're toxic. Right? So effectively, the therapist is the new imam. Right? He's the one who has the real religion. So the religion of modernity is the therapeutic paradigm. It's the therapeutic paradigm. Right? And it's heavily, heavily, heavily secular. And it has specific ideologies, and it has a very specific worldview, right? We really don't have time to get into it. We could spend hours and hours talking about it, getting into detail. But that is a quick overview of what we discussed in our last course. And now, inshallah, we'll get into the juicy bits, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, with a historical account of Islam and the state of the world before the advent of Islam, the coming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the era of the glory of Islam, Muslim decadence, and then the rise of the West and its consequences, mankind's loss under Western domination. We've already discussed the intellectual portion of this now, alhamdulillah. The revival of the Muslim world and how that will look like. We ask Allah Azza for tawfiq in the upcoming weeks. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم اجعلنا من الهداة المتقين الصالحين واغفر لنا وارحمنا